A very warm welcome to all participants who have joined us today for this masterclass. SCAI is committed to fostering the growth of the shopping center industry in India. One of our primary goals is to facilitate knowledge sharing among industry professionals. Our mission is to keep industry professionals informed about the best practices employed by successful shopping centers around the world. SCAI is delighted to present an exclusive online masterclass on Beyond Shopping, the future of retail through lifestyle mixed-use hubs. As consumer behavior rapidly shifts from need-based transactions to experience-led engagement, the traditional mall model is being fundamentally reimagined. Today's retail destination must evolve into vibrant lifestyle ecosystems that seamlessly blend commerce, community, culture, and convenience. In this power-packed session, Tassos will decode how mixed-use developments are reshaping the future of malls and urban environments worldwide. Tasso is founder of 8G Group, a private equity real estate firm active across Europe, Asia, and Africa with a focus on hospitality and residential sectors. He has 30 plus years experience, including leadership roles at 8G Capital Partners, Petra Hospitality Management, and HSBC Principal Real Estate Investment Europe. Tasso is Global Governing Trustee and co-chairs the EMEA Technology Council for the Urban Land Institute. He holds degrees in economics and land management, is a chartered surveyor and a CFA charter holder. So let's welcome Tasso for leading this knowledge-packed online masterclass. So before I hand over it to Tasso, viewers, please feel free to submit your questions. They will be addressed during the question and answer session at the end. So over to Tasso.
Sanjeevji, thank you so much. The year is 1956. If you flew in an airline, this is how the state of the art looked like back in the day. This is the Boeing 707. It had a crew of 3 people. It was full of gauges, knobs, everything was analog. It looks pretty complicated, really busy. This is the state of the art of an airliner today, 2026. This is the Airbus A350. It's completely different. It's unrecognizable. So if you took pilots from the 2 different eras, they would probably not recognize the other's flight deck. So this is how technology and the world has advanced over the last 70 years. Back to 1956. This is the first ever shopping center. This is Southdale Center in Minnesota. It was landmark. It was completely novel at the time. You could find everything under one roof. And this is how it looked like about 10 years ago before its renovation. Now, if you compare the 2 previous pictures, there was a massive, massive advancement in technology, in presentation, and everything else. But if I show you this shopping center today, and I told you that it was designed 70 years ago, maybe you would ask yourself the question, why hasn't the format changed this much? The world has advanced so much. A shopping center looks not very dissimilar from what it was designed 50 years, 70 years ago. So the question is our industry lagging behind? Why haven't we adopted change? Or the most fundamental question is, are we on the cusp of a massive change now in the industry, and we need to be ready for it. Now, when I started my career in real estate about 35 years ago, people used to try to teach me that the three most important things in property, and by extension shopping centers, are location, location, and location. And I'm sure all of you have heard this a million times. Now, I never felt comfortable with that. For some reason, I never thought that location was the most important thing. And if you think about it, if that was the case, the biggest estate agents today would have been Google Earth, Google Maps, Waze, and what have you. So we will be buying our properties from Google Earth as opposed to other portals. So there's something more to property than location. Now, as a fund manager, I used to believe that if I was to use an aphorism, it would perhaps be cash flow, cash flow, cash flow, but it's slightly more nuanced and it's slightly more complicated. So if you ask me today, what are the three drivers which are going to drive our industry forward, and I'm talking not just shopping centers, but I'm talking the industry, I think it's the 3Ds. It's demographics, it's decarbonization, and digitization. And by the way, these come from the annual Emerging Trends in Real Estate report, which was prepared by the Urban Land Institute, of which I have the honor of being a global trustee, and PwC. It's an annual survey of across the property market. We do it across Europe, the Americas, and Asia, and of course India is a big part of it. Now, in this session, I'm going to focus on demographics. And to be fair, when I started my career, a brilliant economist that I had the pleasure to know said, listen, if you're looking to explaining investment returns, probably 70% of investment returns of your property are explained by demographics. So it's something that I've been following very closely. I've done mature markets in Europe, I've done emerging markets, so we're now in Africa, and I always keep my eye on demographics. So what we mean by demographics? Let's look at two completely opposite and different examples, right? At the bottom part of the page is Europe, and this is called a demographic tree. It shows the proportion of the various ages in the population. Europe, which is where I've spent most of my career in, is getting desperately old. So the median age is 43, 44 years. Growth is definitely slowing down. The number of Europeans is dwindling, and as the repercussions of that for a retail person or a property person is that we are looking at people who are now perhaps prioritizing healthcare, social services, and perhaps luxury retail to the detriment of technology and new fashion trends, right? Perhaps that means that there's more luxury retail in Europe just because people are more affluent, but it means that we need to think about social services, healthcare, and what comes with advancements in age. India is exactly the opposite, is at the other extreme. India has very young population, median age is 28, an emerging middle class. It's perhaps the consumption powerhouse of the world. So you have a lot of people coming into the market looking to consume. They are looking at brands, at technology, but at the same time, they need support in by way of education, healthcare, and training, so they could advance in their careers, right? So it's not just consumption, they do need education, healthcare, and support. And it's something that we need to take into account. Now, we talk about Gen Z, the millennials, and so on. And I'm sure this is more relevant to you guys in India because you have a young population. What is important with this generation, it's quite different than previous ones, is that they prioritize experience, right? They don't buy things, they buy experience. They don't want to buy the latest set of trainers. They just want to live the experience. They start their families much later in their life. Perhaps that's an affordability issue. They cannot afford to create their own household, which has implications for the rental market. So, other than providing them goods and services for consumption, they need to find maybe co-living space or more affordable space where they can reside. They are omni-channel shoppers. They are very technologically savvy, right? So you need to provide the full experience, both online and offline, and of course, it's a completely different generation in the sense that you cannot convince them to stay in the office after work hours, which is not something that we grew accustomed with. So for us and many of you, it would be, quite the normal thing to stay long hours in the office, work over the weekends. The new generation, Z and so on, have a very, very well clearly defined work-life balance, which means that they leave the office, they want to meet their friends, they want to have their leisure time, experiential time, and ideally all these things should be very close nearby. They shouldn't be commuting too far away, and something to take into account. Now, that's a very interesting statistics that I've come across, which I genuinely didn't expect. You would have expected that the older you are, the more physical retail you do, right? So you spend more time offline than online. And you would think the new generations would make all their purchases online. But it's not actually the case. This is a statistic that comes from the International Council of Shopping Centers, and it shows that Gen Z, the younger people, do as much physical retail as older people. What does that mean? It means that they search online, they browse through TikTok and all the other platforms. They know what they want to buy, but for the last step of the purchase, they actually go to the shopping center. Maybe they want to see, they want to experience, they want to feel, they want to go with their friends, but that's the last mile, right? So the physical space is coming back, and it has to live in perfect harmony with the online space. Now, having seen the demand, so we've got an understanding of where growth is coming from and what people will want to see. It may be a good idea to have a look at the supply side. Now, one of my main markets, which is Turkey, has a lot of similarities with India, but I was actually shocked to see these statistics, which come from the latest retail shopping center survey from Knight Frank. On the left, you have vacancy. I'm sure most of you will know these figures, but you've got vacancies of about 15-16% in tier 1 and tier 2 cities. And if you go deeper into that, you see some massive vacancies across individual cities. So, for example, Ahmedabad, 1/3 of the market is vacant, of the shopping center market is vacant. Nagpur, you have maybe 50% of the market. That's serious space. And in Amritsar, you have something like 40%. And these are not your tier 1 cities. Perhaps Ahmedabad is, not the others, but this is quite a very serious proportion of space that is idle, it's dead, it's not producing anything, and it has to be integrated back into the market. And if you look at the right, that's the proportion of ghost shopping space, and that's quite a lot. Now, similar to my markets, there are some common reasons behind that. One is oversupply. So, people just think that because my neighbor has a successful shopping center, I should be building one. You have the problem of no differentiation. So you might have an avenue with shopping centers all looking alike, pretty much similar tenants, cannibalizing each other, showing no differentiation. Maybe you have bad locations. So I have a site, I think it's a good idea to develop a shopping center. I developed one anyways, even though it's way off pitch. You would have bad format and bad layout just because the space was not developed by professionals. And you have bad management invariably, because not all shopping center managers are professionals. And something that you have in India, I've witnessed in India, in Iran, and some other places, is strata ownership. So you develop a shopping center, and for cash flow purposes, you sell individual shops. Now, from my experience, all the other factors, maybe you can do something if you keep control of the center. If you have relinquished ownership to individual owners, maybe there's not much you can do. But otherwise, if you have a shopping center which you control, if you have issues with location, design, and so on, maybe there's things you can do, and the solution is not just retail. Now, these problems are not unique to India, are not unique to Turkey. The industry is being transformed across the world, and that's because we need a less retail space, and because retail is not just the answer. This is excuse me, this is a JLL research from the Americas, and it shows the conversions of existing shopping centers into newer and more modern schemes. And 2/3 of all what we've known as shopping centers existence are being converted into mixed-use schemes, right? And 2/3 contain other uses. Retail is just one of the use, and it's actually now a secondary, it's a supporting use. So the shopping centers we used to know are just a smaller part of a bigger scheme, and the bigger schemes now contain offices, residential, and a plethora of other uses. So perhaps we should get used to the idea that the shopping center is a definition that we've used in the 20th century. And perhaps now we should start being accustomed to something more modern, something that people are being attracted to. And this is the lifestyle center. So what is the lifestyle center? It's not just about retail. It's not just the food court. It's not just F&B, right? It's not the shopping trip. It's about having a mixed use ecosystem. It's something that within it's in some places it's called the 15-minute city. It's somewhere where people will have in a close distance everything they need. A place they live, a place they work, a place they shop, entertainment, and so on. So the lifestyle center is a small community, is a small city, if you want to think about it that way, that provides everything for the population. It doesn't put the consumer first, so it's not about attracting someone in my shopping center to buy something. It's about creating a community. It's about attracting people coming to live, to work, to shop there, and create a feeling of community where it's not just a trip, it's somewhere they belong to. We start thinking about not the money spent or the ticket size, we start thinking about the dwell time. So how long we can get people to be there for. right? And of course, it's about the emotions, it's about the experience, and it's about the feelings we generate for people. And I'll show you a few examples. These maybe you're familiar with is in Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia. It's a joint venture between Lendlease, one of the main developers in the world, and the city of Kuala Lumpur. And whereas this thing might have been a shopping center, today you have a mixed-use scheme which, excuse me, includes a huge shopping center, includes 6 residential towers. It includes the first Kimpton Hotel in Malaysia. Kimpton is an IHG brand, one of the major chains. And it also includes a free access communal park on top of the shopping center itself, right? So this is a communal park located on top of one of the largest shopping centers in Asia. It's the focal point. People go there just to be there, irrespective of shopping. They go there, and that's the focal point, that's the magnet. It's something that the city is giving back to the population. And you see how the whole thing merges everything from living, from working, from shopping to entertainment. This is something closer to home. This is a shopping center in Istanbul on the European side, on Başakşehir. Similar to India, Turkey has a lot of shopping centers. We have a lot of vacancy. And this is one of the newer generation of shopping centers. This was developed about 10 years ago. And whereas the original idea of the REIT, which developed it, was a shopping center, the whole scheme now contains a Hilton hotel, the shopping center, of course, residential, and so on. It also contains an amusement park. It contains a gourmet food center, terrace gardens similar to Kuala Lumpur. So it's all about creating the community. It's the focal point for many kilometers around. And as I said, this was developed by one of the local REITs, and it's one of the most successful examples of a new generation shopping centers. Now, if I were to tell you that I want to develop a shopping center just outside an airport, which is far away from the city and where people live, maybe you'd think it's a silly idea. But this is exactly what the Jewel Center is in Changi in Singapore. It's right outside. It's about 45 minutes from the city center and all the other sites of Singapore. But what did they do? They came up with an entertainment center. And if you see at the attractions, is anything but a retail center, right? You have some novel entertainment experiences. You have a forest valley, you have a rain vortex, you have a walking net, you have gardens, canopy bridges. It's a full experience. And by the way, you also have a hotel, you have a shopping center, fully fledged shopping center, and F&B experience. So what do people do now? And I was there last year as well. You go there a couple of hours, maybe 2 or 3 hours earlier than your flight, just for the experience. You would never think I would go to the airport early, or you would think, oh my God, I need to go and I'll waste so much time just because I need to be earlier. But with great pleasure, you take the trip, you go there, and you dwell 2 or 3 hours for the experience. You spend, you shop, you eat, and you're a happy customer. Now, you might think that these lifestyle schemes are just for newly built, newly developed properties, and that there's no hope or no relevance for the existing shopping centers, which is not actually the point. Again, taking you back to the JLO research, which now looks at redevelopments of existing centers, it's come up with a conclusion that about half of redevelopments contain at least three uses, right? So you're talking about existing shopping centers which need to be redeveloped to cater for modern needs. And what do the developers do? Half of those contain residential, one third includes now offices and co-working spaces, about one fifth contain hospitality, and 13% contains healthcare. And these are the redevelopments. So this lifestyle concept is creeping into redevelopment. Now, the lifestyle scheme is about having a number of uses which seamlessly blend into each other and create synergies. And as a developer or a center manager, you need to understand what each brings into the mix, how relevant it is to your catchment area, and how it can create value for your whole scheme. Now, of course, retail is what every one of us is very, very familiar with. That's your anchor. People come in to shop, they spend time, they meet their friends, and if your concept is right, they create repeat visits. Now, offices is perhaps the opposite end. When people are not shopping or in entertainment, they're in their office, right? And this is why our shopping centers are relatively dead during office hours. But if you think about it, if you have an office space, maybe it's fully leased office or a co-working space where you have people there, they come into your center, they spend some flexible time in the co-working office, and then they have lunch, they have dinner, they have their meetings outside in your F&B facilities. That's a perfect synergy, and they attract you can attract people during office and morning hours. Now, healthcare, it's very relevant to us in Europe just because, as I said, people are getting older. But again, also in India, because you have the middle classes urbanizing the cities, and they want to have all the facilities together without commuting too much. Again, that creates flow during the morning. You have obviously repeat visits. So people come in, come out, you can fill in your space. They need other support facilities. People need to sit down, relax, perhaps after a stressful visit, or their relatives need to spend some time and just decompress. So you can see the synergies between healthcare and the other facilities in what was formerly a shopping center. Now, education, which is much more important for younger populations like in India than it is for us in Europe. A few years ago, you would never think that education and shopping centers go together. Actually, you would think that maybe it's a distraction. You don't want students in that space. But if you think about it, if you bring in students, young people, they could be full-time, they could be part-time, they could be just professional training. So perhaps you can have people from your offices coming into the educational space. You bring people in, you fill your center during the low peak times, off-peak times, and also you get new generation of people becoming accustomed to the place. It's part now of their life. They grow up, they end up being loyal customers just because it was part of their happy experiences as students. So you ingrain in their memory your lifestyle scheme, and it's something that they come back again and again. Hospitality, that's quite interesting, and I'll explain why in one of the later sections. But if you think about it, and something that we see in our hotels, people would come to the tier 1 or tier 2 cities from the provinces or rural areas to shop, right? So if you can combine the usual accommodation needs that you would have, from business travelers, again, if they're in your offices, or leisure travelers, if you can provide the accommodation to your shoppers who come there to shop, that's a great synergy. And last but not least, you have residential. And again, that's really a no-brainer. And My own personal question is why this hasn't taken off earlier than recently, because that's your catchment living in the area 24 hours a day. This is your customer living within walking distance. And these, ladies and gentlemen, are the main uses which we find nowadays in lifestyle centers. Of course, there's a lot more, but from what we have seen, these are the main elements of what we would describe today as a lifestyle center. Now, I'm going to show you a few examples of those uses. This is one of the latest concepts in F&B. It was created in Europe. It's now quite popular in the Americas. We see it in the Middle East. It's coming to Asia as well. It's a relatively new F&B concept, and think of it as a shopping center for food, not for stuff. So you have a number of small restaurants, small bars, pop-up chefs, everything under one roof. So you have one communal dining area in the center, and around it you have all the restaurants. So just like I, as a consumer, would like to go to a shopping center as opposed to an individual high street unit, I would go to such a concept for an all-encompassing dining experience. So I can experience Indian cuisine, Malaysian, Japanese, the whole thing. My friends maybe like different things. They can join me. They buy their food from the different restaurants. It brings everyone under one roof. This is something very close to my heart, which I find very, very interesting, and we find it as one of the solutions for surplus space in shopping centers. This is actually a shopping center in Berlin, which is the capital of Germany. It was developed by one of the largest shopping center retailers globally. It wasn't very successful just because it was only 25, I think, thousand square meters of GLA. And there was a lot of other shopping centers in the city as well. So you might say it didn't have the critical mass and it didn't have the differentiation. So what did they do? They took the top floor, which was a car park, so vacant space, and they developed a 122 room hotel. So how do you make a difference in the shopping center? You carve out a space in the ground floor. You create your lobby. You can see it on the left. You can see it. You can create a co-working space, which is full with people both living in the hotel and external clients. You create a bar. You create the bus. And then you create a core for your rooftop where you have created your hotel. It's a very cheap, cheerful design. You cannot go with too much luxury on top of a shopping center, but it is working like a treat. What do you need to do that? Well, first of all, you need a shopping center with preferably space which is vacant, which is surplus. So maybe you think that your top floor is very, very difficult to lease, and the rents would be too low in any event. So if you have unused building density, or if you have surplus retail space, that's the start. You need a brand. The brand will give you the distribution system, it will give you the recognition, the standards, and so on. You can do it relatively cheaply if you have modular design, so it can be very fast, and if you're in the city center, it's much more convenient. And you need to have a hospitality team which is going to run the whole thing. And I'll give you a few examples of what we are doing ourselves. Now, you might think that there's no way I'm going to attract a brand, an international hotel brand, into a shopping center, right? Because they're used to their own buildings, maybe luxury buildings, and they wouldn't be interested in shopping centers. Well, if you look at the hotel hierarchy, you will see that every single chain, that might be, for example, the Marriott, or Hilton, IHG, Accor, have something like 20 or 30 brands, which means that on the top they have their luxury brands. Think of Ritz-Carlton, think of Waldorf Astoria, Mandarin Oriental, and so on. Yeah, definitely these are bespoke luxury buildings. You would never find them in a shopping center. However, if you go further down into what in some countries is known as 3 to 4 stars, in other countries is known as upscale or upper upscale, or in the hotel language it's called select service, you have a category of smaller room, more cheerful, more economical hotels, which provide you exactly what you need if you are a business traveler or someone who is not looking for luxury. It's giving you a clean room, a known quality, a shower, and somewhere where you can crash out and you continue your day. So if you have a shopping center and you're thinking of a hospitality component, which is like what we do, you can go to the brands, to the big chains, and say, I would like to discuss, and these chains have actually what they call conversion brands, right? These brands were specifically designed for conversions of either offices or shopping centers or other hotels. And so, for example, in Marriott, you would find 4 Points Flex. In Hilton, you would find Motto, and so on and so forth. And it's a very, very imaginative and actually profitable way to convert part of your space. And just to show you examples of these spaces, just look at these rooms, right? The cheap construction, cheerful, quite quick to develop. It can be modular. So if you look, for example, the bottom right part of the screen, Staybridge Suites by IHG. It's something that we're looking, a brand we're looking for our own shopping centers, so it can actually work very, very well. This is an example again from Europe. It's slightly different to the shopping centers that we are used to, but it's quite interesting because it just shows the evolution of the retail market. So Kaufhof was the best known and the most successful chain of department stores. So the city center locations, not exactly shopping centers, department stores. So they have the usual facilities. It's part of the city's identity, old listed properties, luxurious, and they were landmarks, but they have been falling into hard times just because people nowadays need less retail space and they need other things as well. So the chain went into rough economic times. It had a change of ownership, it had receivership. Now it's still alive, but it's got a completely different model. So what they're doing is conversions, mini lifestyle centers. So they take the old, the listed, in many cases, department stores. They keep a retail element, particularly in the ground floor, right? But they do install hotels or residential at the top floor. So if you look at the top right part of the screen, you can still, there is the retail part still at the bottom, and the hospitality at the top. And again, you're looking at cheap, cheerful construction, which sits comfortably in a shopping center, not too expensive, and actually provides a lot of flow. Now, residential. If I told you about 10 years ago that maybe you should consider converting part of your shopping center into residential, you would think it was a silly idea. difficult, no windows, the grid and the layout is completely unsuited for residential. But this is actually one of the most notable trends that we see in the industry today. And the whole thing starts, as you might think, from expensive Western cities where rents are too high and people cannot afford places to live. So one of the solutions that the industry is looking at now for surplus space is residential. And I've got a one. So actually, two very important points I got out of that video is that, first of all, 25% of shopping centers in the States will shut down. So what we are seeing is not a national trend, it's an international trend. So all these thing about lifestyle centers is actually now, it's a thing that's happening now and it's affecting everyone. The other thing is the imaginative way whereby they turn retail space into residential, right? My personal concerns when I first looked at it, having spent my career in the industry, was the lack of windows, the grids, the inability to create residential space as we know it. But nowadays, people are looking for an affordable solution. They need a solution with facilities. So you have the gym, the restaurants, and so on. So you are able to kill two birds with one stone if you do residential, and you can provide entry-level accommodation. It's not perfect as we know it, that's right, but it's entry level, it's quite affordable, and it's quite interesting for younger people who are starting their lives. And actually the trend has caught on very, very well, and in some cases beyond all expectations. Now, to continue on the theme of residential, and this might not apply purely to conversion of retail space. It might apply to additional building space on top, or maybe adjacent sites which can be converted, can be developed anew into residential. So one of the latest concepts in the property world today is branded residential, right? What does branded mean? It means a good quality residential which carries a brand. This brand can be from the hospitality industry, it can be from the fashion industry, it can be a lifestyle brand, and so on. What is the advantage? The advantage is that as an owner, I know that I'm getting a particular design, a particular quality. I know I'm getting the services, and I know that the management will carry some standards. Now, this branded residential can be standalone, or they could be part of a hotel. This, for example, the example we have here is a mama shelter project in Cape Town in Africa. This is a mid-scale brand, it's not luxury, right? So it could easily sit on top of a shopping center, or it could sit next to it, particularly if it's part of a mixed-use scheme. It's mid-scale, not too expensive. It's part of Accor, one of the largest hotel chains. If you see on the right, the design is it's quite contemporary. It's a lifestyle design. It's not your conventional design, right? So if you are looking at slanting your shopping center towards more of a lifestyle theme or more modern, this is actually a very, very nice way to go about it. And just to give you some further information as to why branded residential might be a good idea as part of a lifestyle scheme, is the price premium. So if you take two buildings exactly the same, one unbranded and the other branded and unbranded, the average premium you would have in your sales price would be about 30%. This is the global premium between a branded and an unbranded property. Now, of course, this depends on the particular city market and the supply. So for example, if you're in New York where you have a lot of branded and you have a lot of quality accommodation, the premium might be lower. Could be, for example, 5 or 10%. In other cities with lesser provision, this premium can be 50, 60, 70% or even higher, right? So if you think about it, if you have surplus space on top of your shopping center, if you have an adjacent site and you're looking for something to do, a branded residential, particularly if your city does not have that much of a quality provision, could actually be a very, very good idea. And just to give you some additional information, who is active in this space, you've got the hotel chains. So you've got Marriott, Accor, Four Seasons. Of course, that's luxury. But if you go with Accor, Marriott, Hilton, you could have mid-scale brands quite suited for your shopping centers. You have car brands, you have fashion brands like Armani, and so on. So it's a very, very rich ecosystem to consider. And it might be a good idea to consider it as part of either your conversion or your extension of your scheme. And actually, this is something that we are doing in Turkey. These are 3 of the shopping centers that our partners are managing. You would call these second or third tier cities. GLA is between 21 to 41,000, and in these cases, these are just the 3 of the properties we are working on. We have similar problems like you're facing in India. Oversupply, lack of differentiation, just because a more modern scheme came on the market after us. So the question is, what do I do? Do I start pumping money in the center to create something more luxurious or up my game in retail, or do I do something different and differentiate myself? And this is actually what we're doing. In some of the cases, like the one on the right, we're considering a hospitality component on top, perhaps with some mid-scale branded residential. That's the shopping center on the right. And on the left, we are again looking at converting parts of the center, that's the top floor, into mid-scale hospitality. It's the Staybridge Suites example that I showed earlier. Now, in some locations, the provision of hospitality and residential is just a fantastic idea because they're a very dense part of the cities. You have a lot of shopping area provision around, but not so much hospitality or residential. So it would actually be a very, very good addition to the shopping center. Now, a small diversion, I just want to show you some examples from Europe to make the point that lifestyle centers are not just shopping centers, but they could apply to historical city center properties. This is Madrid in Spain, right? This is one of the landmark properties in the city, is bang in the center. The original building was constructed back in the 19th century, and maybe you can relate with some of the most historical cities in India. I'm sure you've got some similar construction, similar locations, and similar in historical significance. This property was a banking banking. It was a banking facility. So you have a number of offices, buildings joined. It was used as a bank over several decades. And then comes the financial crisis, and the banks collapse. And you have a number of vacant properties in the center of the city, unknown future for offices. What do we do with them? So the developer who had this bright idea acquired and consolidated the site. It wasn't easy, particularly in the center of the old city with many different owners and so on. They applied for a mixed-use development. It took some time to convince the local authorities that they would maintain the facade of the building, they would maintain the historical character and so on. So what do you have today? You have a property which comprises a Four Seasons, some very luxurious retail space. It's still partly a shopping center, branded residential, and some offices. So lifestyle centers are not just in shopping centers, are not in the fringes of the cities. Lifestyle centers are everywhere. Transporting you now to London, again in the UK. Again, these are not shopping centers as we know them, they are department stores. But just to show you that even top prime locations in places you would never think would suffer as retail locations are suffering. The property on the left, perhaps you know it, is Marks Spencer's on Oxford Street, flagship store. I mean, we would all travel from all parts of the world to Oxford Street to shop at Marks and Spencer's. It was hit by a crisis. Just too much retail space. The whole of Oxford Street was suffering, so they had to do something about it. Now, the answer again was a lifestyle center. But the question is, do you actually keep the building or do you knock it down? It's a very fine balance between planning, construction costs, and environmental considerations. Now, that was a bit of a tug of war between Marks and Spencer's and the City of London Planning Authority. Initially, they approved the demolition of the property and the development of a new scheme, and then there was a change in the local government and they annulled the planning permit. So Marks and Spencer spent a few years at court trying to convince that a retail scheme did not work anymore. It had to be a mixed use, trying to convince that it's an example where a conversion is not easy and the most economical use would be to knock it down. And actually, after a few years, this is what happened. So what is it going to be going forward? It's going to be a lifestyle center, again, with retail, residential, and parts of offices. Again, on Oxford Street, slightly different story. No planning concerns. I mean, it was a slightly different construction. In this instance, it's going to be the redevelopment of the existing department store into offices and retail, and of course some F&B and leisure facilities. So again, you're looking at historical retail locations becoming small lifestyle centers. Now, just to tell you a bit about what we do and what makes me qualified to speak to you. One of our companies in Turkey is called Petra Hospitality Management, which is now the largest hotel manager in Turkey. We manage something like 4,000 hotel rooms in 5 countries. We're now in 5 countries. We are Marriott's largest operator in Turkey. We are fully accredited by Hilton, Accor, IHG, and all the big boys. We have recently formed a joint venture with Turkey's largest commercial asset manager, a company called İsas Holdings. They are managing 24 shopping centers. They are the largest in the city. Sorry, they're the largest in the country. They manage most of the retail space, and they're also international. Why did we form this partnership? Because the largest retail manager in Turkey realized that yes, we are moving to a lifestyle concept, not just retail. So the team we have formed is able to manage lifestyle centers with our partners managing the commercial component, retail, offices, and what have you, and we manage the beds. So we manage hospitality, we manage residential, and so on. This was a response to a market need. So a lot of shopping centers, I would dare a guess, maybe 20 to 25% of shopping centers need a makeover towards lifestyle. And this is why we've created this. And actually the response has been very, very strong. It's validating our concept. And we are deploying the solutions I've described earlier, not just in Turkey, but in neighboring countries. Just to give you a very small glimpse of our portfolio, that's 24 shopping center, 20 hotels in Turkey. So our portfolio approaches, 50 properties. We're also international. And the last part of my talk is going to be some of the problems we're facing, because it all sounds very good as an idea, but there's some issues that we need to take into account. And I'm sure most, if not all of these, apply to India as well. The first one is planning. Some countries like Turkey have an easier planning regime. It's easier to convince. But you need to secure a change of use, which is not always easy when you have an operational or a trading property like a shopping center. The other problem is construction costs, which are very high. So whenever you think about conversion, you need to think about construction costs. One of the reasons we are looking to use to alleviate the problem is modular construction. And in a few years, hopefully, we'll be able to do 3D printing, one of the recent trends in PropTech. Another issue we are facing, and this is something that your CFO will remind you or your bank will remind you, is that when you have a lease, you need to show the cash flow, right? We have leases with fixed rent, with variable turnover element, and so on. If we now move into a different model and start thinking about dwell time, the question is, how do you quantify that value in your valuation? And how do you quantify the value that your footfall for the other users brings to other users? And this is something that the valuation industry is working on. One of my last slides. It's very hard to predict the future, but if someone was to take a guess about the trends going forward, and this is Broadway Malian, one of the biggest master planners in the world, what's going to drive our world is that people will want open spaces and landscaping as a central concept. Remember the TRX Center in Malaysia? That was exactly that. Healthy gastronomy as an anchor when moving towards more healthy options. Free access to leisure and entertainment, so you can join the people, they can fill in your other users. But that goes back to the problem of the valuation. How do I prove to my CFO and my shareholders and my bank that I'm adding value? Something that you all know, experiential and combining physical with tech. I'm sure you're doing already. And the other thing which bodes very, very well for lifestyle centers is commuting less. The public transport systems are now bursting to the seams. We need to have properties or centers which combine users in a close location. And of course, local is now the new suburban. Last slide shopping center is of the future is not a place to shop. It's somewhere to live, learn, work, and belong. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Tassos, and thank you so much for your attention.
Thanks, Tassos. We had a very interesting session. I request my viewers, if you want to ask something or something is cropping to your mind, you can post your questions. We have 5 minutes for that. And please do not hesitate.
You can always ask questions now, or reach out to me through the link and send your questions later. Entirely up to you.
Yes, surely. They can do that. And let's see. But we had a very interesting session, and the best part, the beauty of this session was that you focused on India also. That is that made it very interesting. What happens with the international speakers is that okay, unable to chat. There is Sachin. See, I am getting a message that okay. Yeah, Tasso, we have got Shraddha Shenoy is asking, can you elaborate more on experience-based leases in context of India?
Good question.
Should I repeat it? Can you elaborate more on experience-based leases in context of India, in Indian context, lease based on experience?
This is a very difficult context everywhere in the world, and there's no solution. There's no solution to that. I started my career as a valuer. I am a chartered surveyor, and we always learn how to take leases with a rent, fixed or variable, and convert that into value. I'm afraid I don't have an answer either for India or for the rest of the world. It's one of the problems that we need to face, and it's one of the concepts that the industry needs to develop as we move into lifestyle centers. Excellent question. I'm afraid the answer is just not there for everyone.
Well, now we have Harsh Bayani is asking, how can we attract top-tier international consultants who can provide end-to-end solution for an old shopping center, from design development to PE funding? Very interesting.
Well, I think in India in itself is perhaps the most attractive market, so I don't think you'll have problems attracting companies. I'm sure you'll find a lot. My suggestion to you is to look for solution partners who can provide end-to-end. So it starts from the design, from the concept, the brands, and everything. And ideally, you need to have a manager who can do all asset classes, right? You don't need a hotel manager or a co-working manager. My suggestion is to find someone who can do the 360, all asset classes, one solution.
Okay. See, due to time constraint, we have to, end the session. Once again, I thank you, Tasso, for sparing your precious time and sharing your experience with the Indian audiences, and look forward to have your session again in future also. So with this, we end today's session. Thank you, Tasso. Thank you once again.
Thank you to Kokoji. Thank you, Anjibji. Thank you, SCAI, for inviting me, and I hope we have the opportunity to continue this dialogue.
Yeah, surely. Okay, thanks. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.